You know, most of us will never get the opportunity to see or hear for ourselves these icons of racing history. It was that fantastic period of the late 1960s which brought racing into the modern age. A time of rapid discovery and progress and change that was visible to the layman onlooker. I think that's why we look so fondly back at the 1960s as a decade in racing. Still the charm and gentlemanly camaraderie, the national colors still displayed on these sleek machines. But it had come to age. The competition was there. Racing was a serious sport, and it was only just beginning. This is an exciting day, an exciting time. Nearly 10 years, a decade on from its release, Assetto Corsa is home to another great package to experience this historic era. They've done it again. Bazza and Co are releasing what they call World Sportscar 60s Legends. A wonderful group of machines lovingly created, converted, massaged, and packaged together for us to enjoy. Bazza's touring car and GT packs are some of the most loved by vintage racing enthusiasts, and I'm sure this one will be no different. The New World Sports Car Pack is a group of 18 of the finest 60s sports cars bundled together and brought up to the standards of modern Assetto Corsa. Some you'll be familiar with, like the ever-gorgeous Ferrari 330 P4, or its famous competitor Ford GT40 Mark II. But then there are others, more obscure or long awaited to help round out those historic grids. No matter the car, new or old, all have been worked on and revised to provide the best racing experience possible, with new headlights and wipers and improved shaders on the cockpits, freshly made 4K skins, over 300 in total across all cars, historic replicas by the wonderful creator Pasta. They also feature many corrections and custom level of detail models to ensure consistent performance. And of course, most importantly of all, revised physics and driving characteristics, using the latest tricks of custom shaders patch and Assetto Corsa modding to represent these cars as faithfully as possible. It's an impressive set and something I could spend hours and hours making individual overviews of all 18 machines. They're a ton of fun to drive, and without any wild, bold claims, I really feel like these are some of the best vintage vehicles you can climb behind the wheel of in the whole sim. And while they're all fantastic fun and have some great stories, let me highlight a few that have got me especially excited. This one jumped out at me immediately because of how it looks. I hadn't seen something like this before. This is the Maserati Tipo 151. It may not look like it, but this very well could have been the first car to ever top 300 kilometers per hour down the Mulsanne. Introduced originally in 1962 and revised over the following 2 years into the model we have here, the car only weighed 2,100 pounds and sported a 4.9-liter V8 outputting over 400 horsepower. This is something I thought only Americans could dream up, something this ridiculous. The Maserati 151 Tipo. It was one of the first cars I had to try. When I saw this set of cars, it looks ridiculous. We'll come through some of the S's here. I'm at Riverside International Raceway, one of my favorite places to test or just simply drive any car. We'll get to the top of the hill here, turn 6. It's a tricky place to get a car like this slowed down and around a corner, but give it a hint of throttle, and you'll stick that rear end out and can just slide for days. We'll just kiss the edge of the grass there, come up to a very tricky turn 7. This car does not like turning, but it was very much a Le Mans special, or had Le Mans in mind. That's why you've got the crazy 4.9-liter engine, 400 horsepower in such a light car. This will kick the rear end around, and it was very fast. It was one of the fastest cars, if not the fastest, when it appeared in 62, 63, 64. Onto the backstretch here and see if we can get a little bit of that power down and see how fast it really goes. get it slowed down then for the final corner. Oh, it's a bit shaky on the brakes. Down to third gear, get it into the final corner. It's kind of like a NASCAR turn. We'll just give it a little bit of throttle and simply slide our way around the whole thing. It's not fast to slide a car like that, but it is super fun, and that's really what it's all about. One of the common problems that drivers had with this car at the time was that it burnt off the rear tires, and I can see why. You can absolutely feel that characteristic immediately. Even if you don't try to slide it, it just really wants to swap ends on you. You sit so far back in this thing, really outside the rear axle, that it's just always going to be drifting. And I think this would be such a hard car to handle, especially on a track like this, if you were to do a long race. But I guarantee you'd be having the most fun. The sounds in this car give it a lot of life. They're very deep and raspy, and I'm not sure where they got the sounds from, how they got the sounds, but they sound so good. This car was affectionately called the racing van, and if this is what vans race like, I could see myself racing a lot of vans. We'll give it some of the beans down the straight again. Slide it through the kink corner. I'll get it down a couple gears. We're just going to understeer our way onto the oval, give it a little throttle, get that rear end to kick around into the sunset, driving one of the most ridiculous Italian cars I've ever seen. The Tipo 151. Oh, what a nice car. What a nice car this is. And in case brutish power isn't your thing, this is the Nissan R380 Mark II. A record setter in its own right, the original version of this car broke nearly all international records for speed and distance between 1965 and 1967, cycling laps at the highly banked Getafe testing circuit. This Mark II model was famous for its overall win at the 1966 Fuji Grand Prix against the proven rival Porsche 906s. Fitted with a 220 horsepower GR8 inline 6-cylinder engine, the light chassis was extremely nimble and serves as a prime example of the budding Japanese auto industry, which would become such a powerhouse over the next decades. I think the cliche goes now for something completely different. This really is completely different than the Maserati we were just driving. The R380 II from Nissan. Such a cool car, and one I know has been desired for a long time in Assetto Corsa, especially with all the folks that really love the Japanese racing history. The perfect car to take around the classic Fuji circuit. I almost feel bad that I'm racing it at Riverside, but anywhere twisty, this car is a ton of fun. It doesn't have it in the horsepower numbers, not compared to the Maserati and things like that, but it is such a more nimble car. And looking across this whole set of cars, it really falls into that category of the nimble and quick cars that aren't necessarily the high top speed. Don't let the lesser horsepower fool you. This is still quite a nimble car, quite an exciting car to drive, and when paired against some of the other cars of the same time period in this set, it performs really, really well. As we'll try to find the apex here and get it onto the straight and see what this thing has. An inline 6 buzzing away behind me like a pack of hornets. We'll use some of the banking to get this thing slowed down and just roll on through. It's a pleasant driving car, and it really fits into this, what I think of as kind of a second class, some of the older cars that are in this set, and could make some fantastic racing against those. But this set of cars, unlike Bazza's other sets with the GTC and the TCL cars, these are not BOP'd against one another. So each car is really as it was in the time, and depending on the track you choose, depending on the type of race you have, you're going to see some of the cars perform better than others. I think that is an awesome thing, in my opinion. It helps really bring out what's so interesting about sports car racing at this time, and just enjoying different cars for what they are, especially in the solo driving experience. It is a lot of fun. Tip it into turn 7 here. More so than with that Maserati, I think, because we do have a little less horsepower behind us to mess things up, but I feel so connected to the front steering in some of these cars, especially like the GT40 Mark II and the Porsches, the 906, 908. They feel so responsive, so much more so than I remember a lot of other cars feeling in Assetto Corsa. And I did talk to Bazza about it, and spent a lot of time. They spent a ton of time working on understanding the different parameters that Assetto Corsa has and trying to perfect how they were modeling the front suspension, the rear suspension. And these cars drive very differently, I think, than a lot of other stuff I've experienced in this sim, where maybe some of the cars, especially the default historic cars, feel a little bit sloppy when you're steering them. These feel so much more responsive, and such a pleasure to wheel around the track. It doesn't get much more gorgeous than this. A story likely many of you know, the Jaguar XJ13. It was meant to be a comeback. Jag had been so successful in the 1950s at Le Mans with both their C and later D types. Their famous battles with Ferrari truly immortalized that era. And so with Ford entering the frame to battle Ferrari and the eyes of the motoring world seemingly more and more fixed on that French Enduro, Jaguar set out to develop the most advanced prototype to compete at that top level. It featured a monocoque design when it debuted for testing in 1966, something often credited to Colin Chapman's Formula One effort with the Lotus 49. Affixed to the subframe was the newly primed 500 horsepower V12, and it was all hidden under sleek bodywork designed by C and D-type aluminum artist Malcolm Sayer. Manhandled the other two cars around this track, sliding around, having some fun. I feel like the Jaguar deserves a little bit of respect. The XJ13 is one of those legendary what-if scenarios in racing. Developed for years, I think, because of Jag's small size at the time as an organization. Started in 1966, like I said, through 1967, did some testing, was set to debut most likely in 1968, but the FIA changed the rules, or whoever the governing body was at the time, changed the rules for the maximum engine size to try to control the cars, and the rest was history. This car never made it to an actual race. And so it's one of those big what-ifs. Imagine seeing Jaguar alongside Ford and Ferrari at Le Mans. Would have been a heck of a show, and man, this car is beautiful. You can tell it's a much heavier car than the other two I was driving. Even the Maserati feels lighter than this one. I don't know the actual weight figures comparatively, but it's a sluggish feeling car, but it feels very nice and balanced to drive here and how it's been modeled. I think anytime you see this car in a game or a sim, it's a bit of guesswork as to what it would have actually been like, because they really only ever tested the car. You don't know what configurations it would have actually run had it run at Le Mans, but I think Bazza and team have done a great job with their educated guesses on this, and it might be one of the nicest versions that we've ever had in a sim. Everything feels so alive in these cars. The windshield wipers shaking around. Everything has been redone in all of them, and each car feels consistent and has a lot of quality to it. And I love that about a set of cars like this. This whole set really reminds me of what the groups did with Power and Glory back in the day, where they converted and massaged cars from a bunch of different sources and sims to try to make this cohesive package where from car to car, everything felt similar. It all could be raced together and have fairly realistic results. And it was, most importantly, enjoyable to drive each and every car. And I really feel like they've achieved that with this, especially if you combine it. Whoa, yeah. You combine it with the other sets of cars they've already released. It's so much fun. Couple laps on the tires now, and they're starting to get a little bit warmer, and the car is sliding a bit more. And again, it's not quick to slide these cars, but it is so much fun that it's tough to resist doing. We'll get it through the chicane here and try to give it the beans one more time down the long straight. Riverside is such an awesome test track for this reason. We'll hit 5th gear just as we get to the bottom of the hill. You gain a lot of speed through that little rush down, and then it's so tricky to get through this kink, especially in a car like this where I think it's actually creating some lift as we understeer our way through there. Get it down a couple of gears, get set up for the long right-hander. I don't really want to stop going in this car. I've done so many more laps than I need to record this video of looking at a few of these cars, and all of them are this much fun. I've picked these 3 because they are interesting cars that are a part of the set, and I know some of the other cars folks have seen before, but there's a lot. In 18 cars that are included in this, there's a lot of fun to be had, and you could spend a whole week doing this every evening and to experience everything that this set has. And that's really just a taste of what's available in this set, and something I know I'll be coming back to time and time again. Coupled with the mod, as always, is a wonderful manual, some 42 pages deep, which details each car and its origins and true life story. Clearly, a lot of love and care has gone into this set of cars, and when mixed with the other fantastic GTC and TCL sets, it's tough to think of vehicles from the era which have yet to make an appearance in Assetto Corsa. On its own, it's simply fun to read and lap the different cars in your favorite circuits, but I know leagues will be popping up to run these cars soon enough, and I imagine there's some exciting racing to come. And so you can grab this set for yourself. I've included links in the description of this video. Be sure to read the requirements. Several of the default DLC are required for the installation. And so go out there and simply enjoy driving some beautiful cars. I know I have, and it's what I'm going to get back to doing as soon as I finish editing this video. So thanks for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.